Hello, and thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. My name is Louise Jeffries and I'm currently the Lead Director of the Vona Toit Model of Creative Ability Foundation UK. I'm also a practicing OT and work at St Andrew's Healthcare, Northampton. The ward I work on, Robinson Ward, became a Centre of Excellence in 2015 through an 18-month project in a joint partnership between St Andrew's Healthcare and the Foundation. During open days the service hosted, we'd present in detail how we became a Centre of Excellence. This presentation is a condensed version to show the gradual process we went through to embed the model into our clinical practice. St Andrew's Healthcare provides specialist mental health care for people with challenging mental health needs. Robinson Ward is a 17-bedded ward within the men's and women's medium secure services within William Wake House, shown on this picture. Robinson Ward cares for men of a working age with diagnosis of mental illness. The following 4 slides show some of the inside of the building. So this is the lounge area on the ward with the MDT office situated at the back behind the pale blue wall. Off the lounge is a therapy kitchen, laundry and games room with a pool table. The bedroom corridor is situated through the door to the left of the MDT office and all rooms are en suite. This courtyard leads from the lounge, which is used for sports, picnics or just having a walk and relaxing in the sun. There's a swimming pool within the building, as well as a gym and a large sports hall. This is the workshop, which is a vocational focus, although patients can also make items for themselves. And there's also an arts and crafts room, educational facilities, a music studio and library. In the centre of the unit is a large courtyard garden where patients can tend to the garden themselves, enjoy family visits outside and have social events in the summer. So the following slides now begin to explain the journey the OT team went through to change practice and embed the model of creative ability within clinical practice. So there was a lot of staff who had an interest in the model, and the current model of practice we were using couldn't inform us how to engage acutely unwell patients and didn't pick up on the small visible changes. And so we looked to the model of creative ability to see if this could help. The OT team all received training in the model and some went on to do some more specialist training. We also started a monthly support group, which is still running today with almost 30 members. This has been essential in supporting each other and learning together. And so now we then began to observe our patients, to assess levels and started to use the language of the model in our conversations. And throughout these early days, we read and reread the theory. So we thought if we could conduct a task assessment on each of our patients, we'd be able to confirm the level and then off we go. We spent hours trying to think of a suitable task. We wanted resource boxes just to go and get and do with the patients. We became obsessed by this, but we quickly realised we couldn't have generic task assessments as our patients are all so different. And over time we began talking about the levels our patients were on, and we're finding that because we had known our patients for so long, actually a formal task assessment at this stage wasn't necessary because we knew their levels of creative ability. So this slide represents the distribution of levels of creative ability in 2012, and there is the same distribution of levels today. By creating this visual representation, we quickly realised we were providing interventions aimed at the passive participation level, which wasn't meeting the needs of the majority of our patients. So this was our starting point, but how were we going to change our service and what challenges would we face along the way? We quickly realised with our current programme our patients had little to motivate them to get up in the morning, and they were certainly not going to start getting up and doing unfamiliar task assessments. And so we had to give them something to get up for and tailor our interventions to make sure they were at the right level and would motivate our patients to engage. So we shifted our focus and instead started to change the activities we offered. We gradually changed one group at a time. We began to introduce more individual sessions reducing generic open groups. And we slowly changed the programme to become more bespoke for the different levels of creative ability. We became creative in how we could use the space and different environments we had available to us. And so eventually, after time, when patients moved on and we began getting new admissions, we began to develop a structured assessment procedure. The table on this slide represents that procedure and which elements we would carry out for individuals on different levels of creative ability. I'll let you take a look, but if you have any questions, please contact me at the addresses at the end of this presentation. By the end of the assessment phase, we'd levelled every patient and then identified the treatment priorities to design the treatment programme. Through this process, we identified which patients needed one-to-one input and those who could tolerate parallel working, and that's 2 patients with 2 staff. We then identified which member of OT staff would deliver the intervention, depending upon experience and skill mix. When planning the programme and trying to identify potential groups, we faced various challenges, including safeguarding issues amongst patients, different diagnosis, and paranoia forcing patients to avoid group situations. But despite these challenges, we slowly began to change our therapy programme. And so we changed the term sessions and replaced this with treatment sessions to regain our professional integrity. We constantly refer to the theory to inform us of the type of activities to provide, and as a result, our treatment sessions became more focused on specific therapeutic interventions. We looked at the treatment aims and treatment principles, and they informed us, and then we would think of specific individualised activities. In the past, we'd think of an activity to start a group and invite all patients. However, our patients were used to coming to all the groups, so we had to clearly explain why suddenly they couldn't come, and these were some of the examples of explanations we gave. It's because you concentrate much better on your own. It's too easy for you, you need a bigger challenge. The other group is smaller, and you get on better with the patients there. And it really didn't take long at all for the patients to get on board, and they were all used to the new ways of working. Before this change, it was easy allowing patients to choose what to do. There was little planning, getting out some paints, a game, or cooking the usual meals. However, patient-centred care isn't about letting patients do what they like to do. Doing familiar, repeated activities doesn't bring about change in people. And now we have to do all the thinking and planning. We're very aware of our patients' interests and motivating factors, which informs activity selection. But patients now approach us, give us ideas, and leave us to plan and design the activity according to the treatment principles to meet their needs. There are, of course, other challenges in forensic settings because of the restrictions on materials and tools, and you have to be really creative. Again, in forensic services, there are environmental restrictions, reducing opportunities to create new situations. So again, you have to be really creative. We created a bowling alley in an open area. We went to the library where it was quiet to improve concentration, and used outside areas when we could when the weather was nice. So this was our previous group timetable. All groups were open groups with no specific treatment aims. The following 3 slides show the different programs we developed for our patients on the following levels of creative ability: self-differentiation, self-presentation, and passive participation. So this is an example of the timetable for a patient on the self-differentiation level. All these sessions were on a one-to-one basis, aimed at increasing focusing of attention, relating to people, developing concept formation and self-concept, and exertion of effort. This is an example of a programme for a patient on the self-presentation level. And these sessions were either delivered one-to-one for personal management tasks or in small groups with patients on the same level. The focus of all these sessions was on explorative action, developing concept formation and concept of self, developing task concept, developing processing skills, effort, and initiative. The interesting group on the Thursday morning was an intervention specifically designed to explore and develop concept formation. Again, if you want further information on this, please email me. And finally, this is an example of a timetable for a patient on passive participation. Many of these sessions weren't facilitated by qualified OTs, but by a range of professionals. The OT would complete referrals detailing the treatment principles. And the aims were to create a productive programme to develop self-confidence and self-esteem by improving knowledge and skills. So not only did we change our treatment sessions, we also began to ingrain the treatment principles into our daily interactions to embed a culture of social norm awareness. And here's some examples. So we stopped talking through windows or shouting across the lounge. We asked patients to change out of their slippers before leaving the ward. We would make sure patients were ready for sessions and dressed according to the activity and the weather. And we clearly explain norm expectations before going into new situations or starting new groups. So how did we demonstrate the effectiveness of this change? We would take our APOMs and creative participation assessments into ward round to discuss. We reviewed our patients' progress every 6 months in preparation for their clinical review by completing creative participation assessments, activity participation outcome measures, and reviewing the level and reviewing the treatment aims. This then informed our future timetable. So this graph represents the improvement we saw in engagement. It represents 3 patients who were either transferred or were on the ward before and after we implemented the model. Patient D attended 19 sessions 4 weeks prior to the transfer to the ward. However, 4 weeks following transfer, he had attended 57 treatment sessions. Patient A had attended 4 sessions 6 weeks prior to transfer to the ward, but 6 weeks after had attended 16 treatment sessions. And finally, patient R, 2 months prior to using the model in practice, he had attended 11 sessions, but the 2 months following, he attended 34. So we generally saw an increase in engagement and rarely a declined session. This table demonstrates the outcomes before and after the implementation of the model of creative ability through a needs analysis. So before, we had 54% of patients who were participating in ward-based activities. However, after, we had 94%. Before, we only engaged 50% of very unwell patients. However, afterwards, we were now engaging 100%. Before, we had 100% of patients who had problems with social skills, but this wasn't a focus of treatment. And now 100% of patients receive input focusing on social skills. We had 76% of patients who had difficulty with cognition, use of effort, handling tools and materials. And now 100% of these patients have specific interventions to develop these skills. And finally, before we used the model, none of our care plans could demonstrate clinical outcomes, but now all of our care plans can demonstrate the clinical outcomes. So to achieve this, you really need to have weekly meetings for a minimum of 2 hours. You need a lot of time for reflection to think about what's working and what isn't. You need to have joint sessions with your support staff and other OTs to discuss why are we doing the intervention and what treatment principles are we applying. You need to complete assessments and treatment sessions together to share your knowledge. Writing notes together is also advantageous to see if the session was successful and what we did through the patient's engagement. We also need time to read and learn the theory. I guess the final reflections, change is always difficult and it can be tough. You have to be really determined and committed to this. Your use of initiative and the effort you have to apply is relentless. You need support from your team. You need time to learn, to share and reflect. And if you stop learning, you will stop using the model. Thank you for listening to this presentation. If you have any questions relating to the presentation, then please email me at these 2 email addresses, or please visit our website for a range of resources, a searchable literature database, and news and events. Thank you.